In the headlines tonight, President Taye says dialogue is a source of national strength and wisdom. And Kenyatta urged Ethiopia to turn diversity into national strength. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to EBC World, the voice of Pan-Africanism. I'm your host, Biniam Alamayo, taking you through the latest. Please do stay with us. President Taye Asqueselassie said the National Dialogue Conference is a historic process that can help strengthen and consolidate Ethiopia. President Taye Asqueselassie thanked delegates for holding a historic dialogue that represented Ethiopia's diversity, describing dialogue as a nation's source of strength, wisdom, and ingenuity. The president said the consultation has both historic and unique character. Biniam Gaetana reports.
President Taye Asqueselassie said he would like to thank the participants for holding a historic dialogue that represented Ethiopia's diversity.
ዛሬው ዕለት ድምቀቷና ቁም ነገሯ ለሀገር የሚበጅ ለትውልድ የሚዋጅ
We will never forget this day, a day that serves our country, a day that will leave a lasting legacy for generations to come, a day that strengthens our unity and clearly reflects our shared aspirations and national interests.
The president said dialogue is the strength, wisdom, and ingenuity of a nation, describing the consultation as both historic and unique. He also commended the work of the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission in ensuring the successful conclusion of the conference. He noted that the dialogue was characterized by reason and openness and was conducted in a spirit of listening to one another and with Ethiopian civility. The president further said the National Dialogue Conference prominently reflected the diversity of Ethiopia. Although national dialogue is an old-age Ethiopian tradition, he expressed his appreciation to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for bringing it into practice and giving it an institutional framework. President Taye said the National Dialogue Conference represents a historic process capable of strengthening and consolidating Ethiopia.
ውጥንቅጥ ሲያጋጥማችሁ
Many foreign leaders and friends often tell us, with admiration and even amazement, that whenever Ethiopians face difficulty and complicated challenge, we never fail to find a way forward. The main reason we have never failed to find a way out of times of crisis is that whenever our very existence is challenged, we have the abilities to strengthen to preserve our country, whether by protecting the borders or by coming together as we have done here today through dialogue and consultation.
He added that the dialogue has created a new culture of calmly deliberating on national issues in order to find lasting solutions.
Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has urged Ethiopians to transform the country's rich diversity into a source of national strength and make inclusive dialogue a foundation of lasting peace and prosperity. Speaking at the closing ceremony of Ethiopia's National Dialogue Conference in Addis Ababa, Kenyatta commended the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission for bringing thousands of voices together, describing the effort as an act of patriotism of the highest order. Take a listen.
So your diversity, my brothers and sisters, should never be treated as merely a political problem to be managed. It is an extraordinary national resource. The question is not which people own Ethiopia, and no outsider should presume to answer such a question. The stronger question is this: what has each of Ethiopia's peoples contributed to the civilization that they share? Once you ask it in that way, the map begins to look different. The administrative boundaries may remain, but the roads cross them, the rivers cross them, commerce crosses them, languages cross them, faith crosses them, Families cross them. History crosses them. So our map of this beautiful country shows us where Ethiopian regions are. But it is you, the people, who show us what Ethiopia is. The north needs the south. The east needs the west. The highlands need the lowland. The city needs the countryside. And Ethiopia needs all of its people.
For his part, African Union Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Olusegun Obasanjo, who delivered remarks at the closing ceremony, said Ethiopia's National Dialogue Conference is a significant model for Africa. He congratulated all those who contributed to the successful conclusion of the conference. He said Ethiopians deserve praise for choosing dialogue and consultation as a means of bringing about peace. Take a listen.
Such peace and national dialogue is substantially part of it. No substitute for dialogue for peace. All parts must be included as the recommendations of the outcome of this great effort are being implemented.
The Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission has successfully laid a historic foundation to resolve deep-seated grievances and political differences through dialogue rather than force, Deputy Chief Commissioner Hirut Gebrselassie announced. Speaking at the closing ceremony of the National Dialogue Conference today at the Convention Center, Hirut stated that the event opens a new chapter in Ethiopia's political and social history. I quote, "We have opened a new historical chapter that enables us to solve deep-rooted disagreements, historical fractures, and differences of opinion through civilized consultation rather than by force and guns," end of quote. Hirut said the conference brought together 4,000 delegates representing diverse segments of society across the nation, including political parties, civil society, government bodies, prominent personalities, former combatants, and the diaspora delegates engaged in extensive deliberations centered on 8 major thematic agendas aimed at creating stable and prosperous future for the country. And now a quick recap of the major stories making headlines once again. President Taye says dialogue is a source of national strength and wisdom. And Kenyatta urged Ethiopians to turn diversity into national strength. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks once again for being with us. I was Binyam Alamayo, your host, along with members of the tech crew. Please do stay tuned to the rest of EBC World programs. For now, goodbye.
The taste of Ethiopian coffee is unique and its aroma captivating because it is produced within natural forests. Now, the global market has shifted even further. Starting December 31, 2026, the European Union has introduced a new regulation to purchase only coffee that has been produced without deforestation. Any coffee exported to the EU market must be certified as deforestation-free and produced in accordance with the country's laws. For farmers, please cooperate with professionals to record data that proves your farmland is free from deforestation. For suppliers, if the coffee you purchase from farmers is destined for the European market, you must ensure it originates from land that is not linked to deforestation. Ethiopian coffee produced without deforestation is our abundant wealth of tomorrow. Let us understand the directives and put them into practice. Producing while protecting our forests is the only gateway to our market. By not cutting down forest trees and instead protecting them, let us expand our access to the European market. Ethiopian Coffee and Tea Authority, funded by the European Union. For centuries, Ethiopia has carried a difficult tradition. When political and social differences became too deep, arms often became the language of settlement. Disagreements were not always resolved around a table. Too often, they were settled on the battlefield. Today, Ethiopia is attempting something fundamentally different. It is choosing conversation over confrontation, dialogue over division, and discussion over distraction. This is the significance of Ethiopia's national dialogue. At the heart of this historic process is a simple but profound proposition. Differences do not have to become conflicts, and conflicts do not have to become wars. Ethiopia is a nation of extraordinary diversity. Its peoples speak different languages, follow different traditions, carry different histories, and hold different political and social perspectives. That diversity is one of Ethiopia's greatest strengths. But managing it has not always been easy. For generations, unresolved differences have sometimes accumulated until politics became confrontation and confrontation became violence. The national dialogue offers another path. Talk before fighting, listen before judging, negotiate before taking up arms. That may sound simple, but in a country with such a long history of political contestation, choosing a dialogue is itself a profound political and cultural statement. This is not simply another conference. It is an attempt to change the way Ethiopians deal with disagreements. More than 4,000 representatives from different walks of Ethiopian life, alongside voices from the Ethiopian diaspora, are taking part in this landmark national process. They come from different communities, regions, professions, generations, and social backgrounds. They do not arrive with identical experiences. They do not necessarily share the same political views, and they are not expected to agree on everything. That is precisely the point. National dialogue is not the elimination of differences. It is the peaceful management of differences. It creates a space where Ethiopians can say what they believe, explain what they fear, and defend what they value, and perhaps, most importantly, listen to people they may have never truly listened to before. That is where the real transformation begins. Because dialogue is not simply about speaking. It is about listening. Listening to communities that feel excluded. Listening to young people who want a different future. Listening to women whose voices have too often been pushed to the margins. Listening to elders who carry the memory of previous conflicts. Listening to professionals, religious leaders, political actors, civil society, traditional institutions, and ordinary citizens. And listening even when the message is uncomfortable. That is not weakness. That is civility. A mature society does not prove its strength by silencing disagreement. It proves its strength by creating institutions and spaces where disagreements can be expressed without violence. The national dialogue therefore asks some of Ethiopia's most difficult questions. How can Ethiopians rebuild trust? How can political differences be managed without bloodshed? And how can communities that have experienced conflict begin to live together again? How can citizens feel that they belong to one national project while preserving their own distinct identities? And perhaps the biggest question of all, Ethiopians building a political culture in which The argument ends at the table, not on the battlefield. There will be no easy answers. Dialogue can be painful. It can reopen old wounds. It can expose competing memories, grievances, and interests. It can produce disagreements rather than immediate consensus. But that is not failure. The presence of disagreement is not the failure of dialogue. The return to violence is. The real test is whether Ethiopians can remain in conversation when agreement is difficult. This is where the national dialogue can become more than a national exercise. It can become a lesson for Africa. Across the continent, many countries continue to face political polarization, communal tensions, contested histories, and conflicts that seem impossible to resolve. Africa has often paid an enormous price when political differences become militarized. But Africa also has a rich tradition of consultation, mediation, and collective problem solving. Ethiopia's experience can contribute to that broader African conversation. The message is simple. A nation does not have to choose between unity and diversity. It can build unity through diversity, and it does not have to choose between strength and dialogue. Dialogue itself can be a form of strength. Of course, a national dialogue cannot solve every problem overnight. Its credibility will ultimately depend on what happens after the conversations end. Recommendations must lead to action. Trust must be demonstrated, not merely promised. Institutions must become stronger. Citizens must see tangible change. But every journey begins somewhere, and Ethiopia has chosen to begin with a conversation. For a country whose history has too often seen differences settled through force, the decision to bring thousands of citizens together to debate the nation's future is significant in itself. It represents a change in political imagination. From the politics of confrontation to the politics of consultation, from the logic of victory over others to the search for common ground, from settling differences with arms to settling them with words. That is the deeper meaning of Ethiopia's national dialogue. The goal is not to create an Ethiopia without differences. It is to create an Ethiopia where differences no longer have to become wars. And perhaps that is the most important lesson Ethiopia can offer Africa. When a nation learns to talk through its differences, it begins to build peace before the next conflict begins. The dialogue is therefore not simply about Ethiopia's past. It is about deciding how Ethiopia and perhaps Africa will handle its differences in the future. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this dialogue today on the show. We're going to be talking about Ethiopia's ongoing national dialogue, which has been presented as an important opportunity to address long-standing differences, to strengthen social cohesion, and build a more peaceful and resilient future. Participants say that the process is creating space for Ethiopians to exchange ideas, to understand one another better, and also to identify solutions to the country's major challenges. But how transformative can this national dialogue be? We're going to be delving into all this, and I'm so honored to be joined by Dr. Desallegn Chala, who is ecologist and biodiversity expert at Oslo University and adjunct professor at the Addis Ababa University. He has been following new developments unfolding in Ethiopia, and his inputs and insights will be definitely wonderful in this regard. Dr. Desallegn, thank you so much for joining me, sir.
I also thank you very much for the invitation. Just to give you a background, here in Norway, we have an organization which is called Ethiopian Scholars in Nordic countries.
Okay.
And within that organization, we had a dialogue group, and I was the member of the dialogue group. So 4 years back in time, I had the opportunity to take an assignment to review the national dialogue which takes place in different countries so that we can envision what the Ethiopian national dialogue can potentially look like.
Yeah.
And that's how I came to know the topic and how I came to be interested in the topic, just to give you the background. And I'm so happy to be invited by you. I'm so honored. And I'm really looking forward to the kind of conversation which we are going to have.
Thank you so much. That will definitely add input to our conversation, and it's going to be more relevant. I think we can begin by, looking at the broader implications of the national dialogue and addressing some of the key misconceptions surrounding the process. So in this regard, what do we mean by national dialogue in the first place? And what are some of the common misconceptions surrounding this concept?
Thank you for this very interesting question. I think a national dialogue is a dialogue which is taking place at a national level. And by that, it is an opportunity to pause and reflect on the country's past, the historical passes the country has been through, and try to figure out what makes the citizens of a country common, what kind of success we are sharing, and what kind of success we are celebrating together, what kind of victories we are celebrating together. Not only that, what really causes differences among the citizen, leading to disputes and leading to conflicts, especially listing all our differences that became the root cause of conflicts, and putting those on table and trying to find a workable solution for them. So a national dialogue for me is an opportunity to contribute a probable solution to the root cause of our problems. So it is not a marketplace. I mean, you cannot come up to a national dialogue with a predetermined output. It's not a political debate, or it's not a political negotiation. It is a mechanism by which you search for truth. So a national dialogue is the search for truth. That's the way I define. You search for truth in order to re-engineer the politics so that we have a shared future in which everyone live with dignity, everyone live with freedom, and everyone feel included. And that's what a national dialogue is. So coming to the misconception, one of the common misconceptions I see is people consider this as a political negotiation. For me, this is not a political negotiation. It is a search for truth. And it's a search for universal principles so that we can come up with a workable solution. The second thing which I come across as a misconception is a national dialogue is not a maker and a breaker. A national dialogue doesn't have any kind of veto power. A national dialogue can come up with recommendation, but a national dialogue cannot come up with legislation. So the main purpose of a national dialogue is to play an advisory role. One of the reasons why people consider a national dialogue as if it has a veto say is because people hadn't had the chance to read the proclamations through which it has been established. In the proclamations through which the National Dialogue of Ethiopia has been established, this is clearly stated that the main purpose of the national dialogue is in order to play an advisory role. So because of that, a national dialogue is not a maker and a breaker. The main purpose of the national dialogue is in order to discuss on the root cause of conflict in that country so that they can come up with a workable solution. They can come up with a recommendation which can potentially ultimately translate into a law. So the role is an advisory role. And that should be clearly understood. And I think that's one of the misconceptions I see here and there.
Thank you so much for helping us better understand when it comes to some of the misconceptions surrounding the national dialogue. Maybe along that line, Dr. Desalegn, drawing on these lessons and experiences, we can then turn to the purpose and aspirations of Ethiopia's own national dialogue, I think. So in this regard, what should Ethiopia's national dialogue aim to achieve in the first place?
So personally, I think the main purpose of, I want the national dialogue to be a kind of learning process. So it should be an opportunity to enhance the depth of understanding of the root cause of problems in Ethiopia. So it shouldn't be a one-time event. I know that the mandate of a national dialogue is time-bound, but the learning process should continue. So whether on different kind of issues, whether they are reaching on consensus or not, the opinions which have been forwarded by different parties should be documented. And that should be documented, and the mass should have, an opportunity to provide an opinion on them. The mass should have the opportunity to learn from them. And the mass should have an opportunity to learn how they came to consensus and why they couldn't manage to reach on consensus on some of the issues. So I personally think that the national dialogue should be an opportunity to learn about our own problems. In Ethiopia, most of the time, the reason why some of the problems become the root cause of a conflict is for the only reason we haven't got time to sit and discuss on them. And I think that's one of the opportunity. The second thing is, when you see most of the problems in Ethiopia, especially if you see different political parties, what different political parties are addressing is mainly historical grievances of different communities. I personally think that the national dialogue can bring this into the table so that can resolve this, can resolve issues which are related to basic human rights, can resolve issues which are related to basic group rights, so that the political organization would also have the chance to evolve, so that they can start talking about policy alternatives. We rarely hear political organizations talking about, foreign policy alternative, let's say, healthcare policy alternative, educational policy alternative, or even about job creation. So the main achievement should be, increasing our understanding, enhancing our understanding about, the root cause of conflicts in Ethiopia, so that we can learn and we can know them better. So it should be a kind of learning process. The dialogue is time-bound. I personally think that the learning process should continue.
Dialogue does not always lead to agreements or consensus. So given this possibility, what should happen should consensus not be reached?
I think the main goal of dialogue shouldn't be, reaching on consensus. The main purpose of dialogue should be, enhancing the understanding on the problems. So after the dialogue, everyone should have a better understanding of the problem. And at the same time, a dialogue shouldn't lead to a win-lose outcome. A dialogue should lead to a win-win outcome. Everyone in the room should feel their perspective is taken into account. Everyone in the room should feel they have contributed. So it should create a kind of win-win output at the end of the day. When this win-win output cannot be reached, I personally think that different perspectives that have been put forward can be documented, and we can let the issue mature so that we can come back to it in the future. In the meantime, it can be made open to the media. It can be made open to, the mass, so that we can continue discussing on them. And in the meantime, the idea can mature, and finally we can find a solution. That's the reason why I'm saying that, dialogue shouldn't be a one-time event. It should be a kind of continuous process. So I personally think that, consensus shouldn't be fabricated. Consensus shouldn't be made by voting. So when we are not reaching a consensus, I personally think that opinions should be documented, and that should be made available to the public so that the public can learn from it and it can mature through time.
You raise an important point because it is continuous. It's not just, as you said, a one-time procedure or a one-time process. Interesting.
It should be. So the current national dialogue is time-bound. I think it should be.
Time-bound. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So beyond, the objectives and the outcomes, the inclusiveness and the credibility of the process are also, I think, equally important. So who should participate in the national dialogue and how should it be conducted in order to ensure that the process is inclusive, meaningful, and credible? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, probably to answer this, probably if we can briefly review the national dialogue that took place in different countries. One of the most known national dialogue is the dialogue that took place in South Africa. The main purpose of that national dialogue was in order to transit from an apartheid system into a democratic system. What exactly happened in South Africa was the victim got the opportunity to tell their story. All the atrocities that happened to them during the apartheid era. So that they got the chance to tell their story, the chance to be listened, the chance to be understood, the chance to be recognized, so that all the atrocities, all the stories they are telling are documented. And finally, they come up with a motto, which is, we forgive, but we remember so that this cannot happen again. Probably if we can consider the national dialogue which took place in Kenya. In Kenya, they established several commissions. One of the commissions is Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, which is quite similar to the kind of national dialogue which took place in South Africa. They still have another commission, which is called the Judiciary Commission, which were mainly dealing with the Constitution of Kenya. There is a third commission, which is called the Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission, which is mainly dealing with about fair representation in election. Still, there is another commission, which is called the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, which was mainly dealing with the conflict which is happening among the communities. They were even mapping where conflicts are frequently happening in Kenya, and they were playing a prevention role. Out of these commissioners, two of the commissioners are now institutionalized, and they are still there in Kenya. For example, the Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission is still there. They are the ones which are, registering political parties, and they are the ones who are managing anything which is related to election. They are almost equivalent to the Ethiopian election board. And we can still move to, for example, what has happened in Tunisia following the revolution which took place in Tunisia and the failed transition. Four civic organizations, society organizations brought all the political rivalries around the table so that these political rivalries can sit and discuss. In such a way, they can broaden the playground for different political parties. And not only that, that also gave way to, amending the Constitution of Tunisia in an aspire to make Tunisia a democratic country. And actually, these four civic society organizations have got one of the prestigious awards in the world, which is the 2015 Nobel Prize Award. Still, we have another example which might be good for Ethiopia. That is the one which took place in Senegal. In Senegal, it was a kind of bottom-up. They started from the grassroots. All the citizens got the opportunity to tell, the problems which are related to economy, the problems which is related to, language, all kind of problems which are existing in Senegal. So they got an opportunity to listen to the grassroots in such a way they document what the grassroots is complaining so that they can re-engineer their politics. So Ethiopia has got a lot to learn from all these countries, especially from Senegal. I think there is a big lesson that we learned, the importance of involving the grassroots. I think in Ethiopia, all what has been decided through the national dialogue at the end of the day should be part of the civic education. The grassroots should learn about it. We need to enhance the understanding of the grassroots. So involving the grassroots is highly important, because the reason why involving the grassroots is important is because the grassroots is a building block of political parties. The grassroots is a building block of religious groups. The grassroots is a building block of ethnic groups. No. So we have the opportunity to hear the outlook of different political parties, the outlook of different religions, the outlook of different cultural groups. And because of that, I think starting from the grassroots level and the bottom up is highly important. Actually, dialogue also takes place in countries with strong democracies. For example, there was a dialogue in Canada. That was mainly meant to listen to, the indigenous people. In Canada, in the old days, the indigenous people were marginalized. They were even snatching children from parents in the community so that they are not inheriting the language and the culture of the indigenous people. So these indigenous people in Canada have been given the opportunity to tell their story, just like what has happened in South Africa, so that they are listened, they are understood, and they are recognized, so that trust built in such a way. Similarly, the same thing has happened in Australia very recently, I think about 10 years back in time. The indigenous people in Australia also got the opportunity to tell their stories. We have similar kind of thing in Ethiopia. There are ethnic groups and there are communities which have been marginalized. There are communities suffered from stereotypes. There are communities suffered from prejudices. And there are communities who are feeling that the language is suppressed. And there are communities which are thinking that their culture is suppressed. And all these communities should get the chance to tell their story, to be listened, to be understood, to be believed, to be recognized, to document this so that this won't be repeated. The national dialogue in South Africa is actually one of the pioneers based on my personal opinion. It is one of Africa's significant contribution to global peace building. Dialogue is already there in our culture. It's already there in different African communities. So we are using the same tool in order to build a better modern country. So I think it should involve the grassroots for so many reasons. It should be a kind of bottom up.
You raised a wonderful idea there. And thank you so much also for drawing on those excellent experiences from different countries.
South Africa, from Canada, from Australia, we can learn how to deal with historical injustices. And from Kenya, we can deal with how to build impartial institutions. And from Tunisia, we can learn the role of, competent and impartial civil, society organizations. And from Senegal, as you have said, the importance of involving the grassroots. I think there is a lot to learn, but none of them are transplantable to Ethiopia, as Ethiopia is so unique. We cannot benchmark any one of them, but we can take lessons from all of them.
What's your vision for Ethiopia, and how should we measure the success of the national dialogue eventually?
I think the success of the national dialogue is not about reaching consensus on different topics. It is about creating awareness on different topics. And a national dialogue is not also where the winners take all the contest. And the national dialogue is where all in the room discuss on ideas, contribute solutions, and finally it should lead to a kind of win-win outcome. When it's not resulting in a win-win outcome, it's better to keep, the issue so that it will mature through time. People will comment on it. People will give opinion on it. So I think if it is handled in a very nice way, it can completely re-engineer the politics of Ethiopia, I personally think. And in Ethiopia, most of the things on which we are debating is, for me, they are so embarrassing, I'm sorry to say it, because the only reason why they became a source of conflict is because we hadn't had the chance to sit and discuss on them, to sit and have a dialogue on them. So I think that's really very important. And so at the same time, then finally, what I would like to say is, this shouldn't be, a single event, and this should continue. Even on issues on which we have reached on consensus, I think we have to wait until the grassroots, discuss on it, and until the grassroots understand it before making it part of our legislation. So more of opening up, issues to discussion is highly important. And I have a confidence in the Ethiopian people that, it's only what's only lacking is, we have never discussed on those issues. And had it been we discussed on those issues, it's really very easy to resolve, I think.
The ideas emerging from these discussions, these deliberations will eventually play an important role in, shaping Ethiopia's political and societal future. Dr. Desalegn, thank you so much for sharing your insights and helping us better understand the opportunities and the challenges surrounding Ethiopia's national dialogue. I know you have a busy schedule, but you gave us some of your time. I really, really appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, thank you also for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to discuss on this important topic. I thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we come to the end of today's deep dive into Ethiopia's national dialogue processes. A huge thank you to my guest today for his perspectives and ideas. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you as well for having been with us so far. Until next time, it's a goodbye from me, Shufar Alak.